Well, blessed Thursday to you as we come with your daily encouragement. And we are at verse 21, and we'll possibly go into 22, but let's focus on 21. Chapter 18 of the book of Revelation, verse 21, it says, Then a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea. With such violence, Babylon, the great city, will be thrown down and will be found no more. And so it was both symbolic but also prophetic what this angel did. And the sound of harpists and minstrels and the flutists or flautists and trumpeters will be heard in you no more. And an artisan of any trade will be found in you no more, and will be heard in you no more. And the light of a lamp will shine in you no more, and the voice of the bridegroom and the bride will be heard in you no more. For your merchants were the magnates of the earth, and all nations were deceived by your sorcery. And in you was found the blood of prophets and of saints, and of all of heaven has been slaughtered on earth, and of all who have been slaughtered on the earth. Lot there. Don't need to necessarily go through it slowly, but it conveys this message that God's judgment has come. And God gives the reason, or the angel gives the message of God. It says, For all nations were deceived by your sorcery, and in you was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all who have been slaughtered on earth. And that, of course, is talking about injustice. There's a little mark up on one of it. It says in verse 24, it says, in you and in her. So just simply, is it a direct object, or is it is the Lord speaking directly to Babylon? Now, we spent quite a few weeks on this, and the reason for that is to show you that this judgment is just not a flippant judgment of the Lord. It is a great judgment, a judgment clarifying why the Lord is taking his time doing this work. It's because the grievous sin of Babylon / Rome, or a future king, depending on, or kingdom, depending on your point of view, was so grievous in its indictment. It wasn't that there was happy times in it. There'll be happy times in good and bad places. It wasn't that it was prosperous. There are many prosperous places. Proverbs simply says that the Lord can show prosperity upon the wicked and the just alike. But it was the persecution of the saints, the persecution of the leadership of those who had loyalty beyond her. You see, a sign of loyalty was, of course, that you have your deities on the side, but you had to put priority on your patriotic duty and your loyalty to the gods of Rome. And that was considered idolatry. Now, just as an aside, many people have interpreted our patriotic loyalty in different ways. In many ways, we are called to show some deference, to volunteer when we are called to volunteer. At least in our nation, we have the three, what I call the four virtues of civic life: voting, making yourself available in times of war, serving on a jury, and I'm trying to remember what the fourth one is. Simply, pay taxes. Those four things are our civic duties. And two of them kind of fade out. I mean, we get to an age where we're not useful to be fighting in war, although we are called to make ourselves useful in some ways towards that. But jury duty, voting is not something even that is fined upon us. There's some democracies like Switzerland where you're fined if you don't vote. Wouldn't that be great if we're compelling people to have 100% participation in things? But however imperfect our democracy is, it does not require of us ultimate loyalty. Even though we're called to sacrifice for our brothers and sisters in times of war and defend our land and our place, there's nothing compelling us necessarily that will continue on into eternity. In fact, the Lord even says, I will call you to baptize all nations, all communities, all peoples, not just the ones that are Americans. So the Lord is working in and through any different types of government. So we cannot necessarily, in my opinion, call our system idolatrous unless we start making it idolatrous. We still have a tension, in our church sometimes about where we put the flag, how close do we put it to the altar. It is something to be revered, but it is not something to be worshipped. And so there's kind of a tension there. And every solution is imperfect. But what is true of this is that all nations, and that's where our phrase under God comes from, are under the judgment of God. To either let it prosper or to throw it like a millstone into the sea to be seen no more. And that is the tension. America specifically is not mentioned here, but all governments could be applied here. How far is your government or your people in doing the things of God or not doing the things of God? And so that is always the pressing political question to ask. And you know what, in our country, we're going to have divided people. And I'll tell people at my church, you know what we're going to have? Divided people even within the church. And some might say, hey, Pastor, you got to get them in line. You got to talk more politics or doing the right politics. That's what people are really saying. They only want you to do the right politics. They don't want you to do the ones that they disagree with. And that's where we have to make sure we know is there are some insights, but we're not compelling you on who you vote for or what party to vote for or what platform to vote for, but we are compelling you to put Jesus first in your life and let the politics of Jesus help you in other insights of this life. And so when you see this judgment, know it could too represent not just what we would consider evil countries like a China or North Korea or Russia or some other thing that maybe we've already labeled again as an evil empire. It could also be applying to us. And that's why, even with our loyalties to our people, we got to put God number one. And that's why I appreciate, even with the God references, even within our Constitution, even on our money, it can be, yes, promoting the just and righteousness of God, but also it can be scolding you too, especially on money, when all of our bills, all of our coins at least say, in God we trust. And we have to ask ourselves when we hold them in our hand, when we use them, do we trust in God or do we trust this paper bill or do we trust this nation above the things of God? And that's where this book stands in judgment to earth. But we also could say that we're going to strive to do better. We're going to work on being a better place, a more perfect union, as our Constitution says. Remember, the first Constitution didn't work out, if you know your history lessons. The Articles of Confederation, it didn't work. We forget about that. It needed to be scrapped. And then our new Constitution that we've had, and it has been amended, was not perfect, but it's working okay. But we also have to remember, too, there's another document that we honor. It's called the Declaration of Independence. And it reminds us that sometimes These bonds that we have to be renegotiated, and we might have to start over, and sometimes they're peacefully done and sometimes they're not peacefully done. But regardless of what times or situations we may live in our world, God needs to be number one. And that's the message we get from the book of Revelation. Take care. God bless. We'll see you next time.